Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'd like to do is kind of review with you the process for writing an equation of a parallel line that of another line that goes through a given point. So basically, the kind of process for doing that is basically the first thing you want to do is identify the slope. You know, if you're dealing with when you're dealing with parallel lines, you know that the two equations are going to have exactly the same slope. Once you know the slope, you're also going to want to take into account the point that the line has to go through. Take the slope and the point and then plug them in either into a slope-intercept formula or into the point-slope formula. And then basically all you're doing, either way, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're just simplifying. If it's point-slope formula, you're just going to simplify all the way down till it's in slope-intercept form. And if you plugged it in already into the slope-intercept form, you're going to solve for b, which is going to represent the y-intercept. And then you take the y-intercept that you just solved for and your original slope that you knew, and then re-put them back into slope-intercept form, and you're all done. However, even though that process kind of may sound very easy, we all know that there are some mistakes that a lot of students make with this. And so I want to kind of go through some tips and tricks as well as kind of highlight those common mistakes that I see with my students. So the first tips and tricks is when you know you're dealing with parallel lines, sometimes I think it's just helpful just to write parallel lines. Hopefully that will trigger you that the slopes have to be exactly the same, right? Because they're never going to intersect. So you have to, when you just kind of draw a small little graph of parallel lines, that kind of just reminds you to make sure that what your final answer in your equation has to have the same slope as the line that is supposed to be parallel to. The next thing is know the process and stick with it. And I think I sometimes might get confusing some students when I'm saying, plug it in slope-intercept form or point-slope form. But, both ways work, and I was always taught the slope-intercept form, but being a math teacher, I've kind of grown into really liking the point-slope form, and as far as really a true understanding as well. So, however, I know that all students are different. Some students are going to understand one and not understand the other. So, through my course, I work through both different types of ways to find the parallel line. And my advice would be know the process that you like, know the process that makes sense to you, and stick with it. Don't try to go back and forth. Even though I might show you how to do it one way, if you know how to do it your way, do it that way. The last thing is, does the answer make sense? And I think this one's crucial. I use this a lot for word problems. But you find your answer, right? And so it has to be parallel to this one line, goes through a certain point. Well, we can easily check our answer, right? So we look at this new equation our final answer, our equation. Well, if they're parallel, our lines have to have exactly the same slope. So check the slopes. Are they exactly the same? Then to determine if your line goes through your point, take the point that the line's supposed to go through and plug that point in for x and y and make sure that it makes your equation true. If it does, your answer is correct. Now, some common mistakes. I think students a lot of times just confuse slope with perpendicular, or they forget about it. So a lot of times they're using the wrong slope. They'll do the right process, but they just forget the slope as far as parallel lines, and they just kind of make that mistake. The next thing is, especially on like point-slope form, or even in the slope-intercept form, they plug in the wrong points for x and y. Remember, even a coordinate point, x, comma, y. In slope-intercept form, whatever that point is, you plug in the first coordinate in for x and the second coordinate in for y. In point-slope form, where we have a lot of times, x1, x2, y1, y2, I've seen students that they'll plug in the x coordinate in for x1 and then the y coordinate in for y2. You got to remember, when you're plugging them in, it doesn't matter if it's x1, y1, or x2, y2. You just got to be consistent. If you're going to plug in x in for x1, then you got to plug y in for y1. Okay? But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's pretty much your basic review for writing in a parallel line to another line through a given point. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you on more courses. Thanks.